One Piece chapter 1128 is here, and I love it. This just feels so like classic One Piece. Not even just classic One Piece though. I think most arcs begin with the crew coming in and causing chaos. We've seen it at the beginning of Fishman Island. We've seen it at the beginning of Dressrosa. We've seen it even at the beginning of Wano, where before we actually start the arc proper, we're going into a new territory. Luffy's going off the rails in one way or another. The crew is following, causing chaos, having fun, freaking out, and this is that. And these are some of my favorite parts of the series. I love the big emotional moments. I love the lore drops. I love the intricate connections. I love the big hype moments. But these character-centric, chaos, goofy, fun chapters are some of my favorite chapters. So we not only have that, but we also have, well, we saw a new character that was very fascinating, but this leads to a lot of potential explanations about where we are, how we got here, and what we're doing here. And I think I have a couple of ideas that might be worth entertaining until Oda gives the real answer, honestly. But we'll get to those. But first, a shout out to today's sponsor, Factor. Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. Their team of gourmet chefs create each meal using only ingredients with integrity to help you feel your best all day long. I've been using Factor for a while now, and they've been a major hit in my home. Not only because I've never had a dud meal from them, their flavors are so bold, but also because of the convenience. I work for myself and I work at home, which means that I tend to just go for long periods of time. And when I'm in the groove of something, when I'm writing up notes for something or editing a video that's taking a lot of time, I have a tendency to just grab something and eat while I'm working. So something that's simple and yet still nutritious is a balance that isn't always easy for me to strike, and I sometimes fail, but Factor makes it a lot easier. Whether you're managing calories, maximizing your protein intake, or simply trying to eat more balanced, Factor has dietitian-approved meals that will help you meet your wellness goals. You can choose from 6 meal preferences, including keto, calorie smart, vegan, and veggie, and even round out your order with nutrient-rich smoothies, snacks, and energy shots to keep you satisfied all day long. And they have so many different flavors. The variety is incredible. When we got our most recent shipment in, my daughter was picking, she was like, save that one for me, I want that one. She's 5 and she's fighting with me over which Factor meals she gets to eat. So head over to factor75.com and use my code MurphyNapier50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next order. That's factor75.com using code MurphyNapier50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next order. Thank you, Factor, for sponsoring this video, and thank you to you for checking them out. Starting off at the beginning of the chapter, the crew dynamics were a ton of fun in this chapter. Sanji, opening up the chapter with Sanji saying, this can't be a dream. There are too many men in it. What did he say? This can't be a dream. There wouldn't be any men in it. And Nami going, what kind of dreams are you having? We all know what kind of dreams he's having. So we have them jumping off of the crumbling castle. We have Zoro and Luffy asking Usopp, why didn't you just eat the cat? The lion cat. And Usopp's like, it was eating me! That's how I woke up! Which, side note, Usopp's outfit, please could it stay? Like, I realize that they didn't choose their outfits. I realize that they are very likely not even on Elbaf right now, which we'll talk about in a minute. But just look at look at him. Like, look at this lad. This has got to be the best Usopp outfit of the entire series, and I want him to keep it. Like, however long Elbaf is going to be, this arc is going to be, I want him to keep this outfit, please. Everyone else can change, except for Luffy. I really like his too, but Usopp has the best of them all. So Usopp presents his first theory. These are Elbaf warrior clothes that they've been dressed up in. Nami is confused. She's like, we're in Elbaf, but these aren't real trees, are they? Nami, my dear, my love, no. They're not real trees. So they're trying to figure out what they should do next. Should we go into town? Should we try to go out to sea? Sanji starts sniffing to see if Robin's around. Side note, any of these panels that show a more scenic look. It shows more broadly what the space they're in looks like. It's some of my favorite stuff that we're seeing in these chapters because I love this Lego setting. I love seeing the little details in the buildings and in the trees and in the rocks and on the stairs, and like how some of the spaces have smooth tops, some of the Lego pieces have smooth tops, and some have like the indented, like you can still build on here parts, and it's just like, I love this setting so much. So we get a giant grasshopper, and a man writing said giant grasshopper. Scale-wise, the man looks to be just like a large man, not a giant. But the grasshopper certainly is very large. So he drops in just to say, hey, I gotta leave, I'm in a hurry, but I'll just let you know that all the land that you see here is owned by the sun god. All right, peace. And probably my favorite piece of this entire chapter, in a chapter that I have a lot of things that I love, but probably my favorite thing is this page right here, where he mentions he serves this ruler of the castle that they've just destroyed, and the ruler is the cat that they just beat up. Luffy immediately starts apologizing. Oh, sorry, yeah, I actually just, and they stop him. You might call this the land of the gods. And then he talks about the needle god, which is a hedgehog. There's the ear god, which is a giant rabbit. And as he's talking about this, you have Luffy, whose mouth has been covered. You have Nami making that one face that I love so much. Usopp just smiling and sweating and just being like, sounds great. Okay, wow, what great information you give us. We don't know anything about this. Zoro's just kind of looking away and whistling like, I'm not paying any attention here. And then he goes on to say, whatever you do, wherever you go, whatever kind of life you live in this realm of the sun god, just don't go that away. Because there's vicious soldiers there defending the castle. No one that goes there comes out alive. And then Luffy makes the face. And Nami's like, no, don't say it like that. And I'm having the exact same reaction as Luffy in this moment where I'm like, adventure? Did someone say adventure? Okay, let's go. Let's find the vicious soldiers. Let's go seek the thing that no one survives, and let's see how long we could survive it, or how long it takes us to destroy it. And I know that I can rely on Luffy to do exactly what he does on the next page, which is to take off running. Doesn't even wait for the guy to leave. Like, the guy is 2 seconds away from hopping off because he said he's in a hurry and he has to leave as soon as he delivers this information. So he's gonna leave. And Luffy doesn't even wait. He's just like, no, I have a mission now. And I know I can trust that of him because that's what he consistently does at the beginning of every single arc, is he's told not to do something and then he launches into doing that exact thing and just kind of barging his way into whatever scenario he shouldn't be in. And I love that about him. So they apologize. Yep, sorry for everything. And then they leave too. And Zoro, of course, is also very excited about adventure. Vicious soldiers, huh? And Sanji's yelling at him about it. Luffy, as he's running off and we see his face, how excited and joyful he looks. And the guy's just left realizing, oh, there's rubble all around me. Oh. Also, one of my favorite things in a chapter that is full of greatness, I love this, again, wide shot. We see the trees, we see the castle, we see the Lego rocks, but we also see Luffy running and saying, someone's running this way. He's wearing Elbaf clothes too. Whatever, I'll just dodge and run past him. Boom, and then he slams into a mirror. That is so funny to me. That is so Luffy, and of course throws me right back to Whole Cake Island as well. These kinds of shenanigans with our crew just being a force of chaos, entering a new world, upsetting the entire system, and then just being like, okay, bye. I live for this kind of storytelling. So anyway, Luffy hits the glass, it shatters, and that reveals that in fact there is a room on the other side of this world that they've been exploring that has a door, that has a sewing machine, a whole bunch of fabric, a whole bunch of Legos, and it looks like this world that they've been navigating up to this point is all occupied by a giant whose playing a game, who's got them in a cage, has them running this sort of, this alternate reality, sort of keeping them as pets in a terrarium with giant pets and humans that have apparently been put in Elbaf garb and sent off to live in this world as well. And the Straw Hats, for whatever reason, too, have been put here. Here Zoro observes, we're not in the Elbaf ship, right? And Usopp says no, they didn't have a cabin like this. But I just want to say that several times in this chapter, Oda has zoomed out and showed us a wider perspective, being able to see the setting that they're in. And both in the Lego world and now in this room, there's something, I just think, I love the way he's showing us this world from these wider perspectives, and there was something very ominous about being put in this room and realizing this is all a game to someone. Someone's actually playing a game. Now, this could be ominous or it could be a little bit less, and again, we're gonna get to that, but it's such a great reveal to just kind of pull back and let us see, like we can see through the paneling exactly what conclusion we're supposed to draw before the Straw Hats actually start talking it out themselves. And I thought it was just so well, like the perspective, the way Oda revealed it, I thought was so well done. So Chopper's here crying. Apparently he was kept as a sort of pet as well, but on this side of reality because he's cute, I assume. But he has a collar on that he couldn't break and is just really happy to see everyone. I do love that in this very ominous situation where they're all noticing like we're all being treated as pets, just being dressed up and then tossed inside this cage to just see how we'll all interact with each other, as everybody is kind of realizing how creepy this whole situation is. And then someone says in the chapter, but does that mean that we're already in Elbaf, a giant's house inside the land of giants? And Luffy, in the midst of all of this, his response is, oh, we're in Elbaf? All right, awesome! Like, he's cheering, he's celebrating at just that, oh, good, we're here. And Nami says, and I tend to agree with her, we don't know for certain that we actually are on Elbaf. All we know is that a giant did this. I also really love Usopp's observation here, where he says, we really need to avoid friction. Even though this person is a creep, and even though this whole situation is very creepy, we really need to just sneak out of here and not cause conflict. And he's right. If you're going to be staying in Elbaf and trying to work with the giants, you don't know what kind of situation you're in right now, so maybe don't cause a bunch of friction right out the gate is a good plan, and I think that was really smart of Usopp. But then, of course, the snakes and the mice and the ravens start coming in and attacking, and Usopp's like, never mind, kill them! Kill them all! I don't like any of this! And again, I'm just really, really loving the panels in this chapter, because this panel with the snake rushing in and Usopp freaking out and Nami's hair going flying in the air as she freaks out as well. Luffy just squaring up to fight. It's just like, it's such a great perspective and such a great shock after Usopp saying, we don't want to cause friction, and then the friction comes and then he's like, never mind! Friction! So we get our first look at the sun god, or what's the figure that's being called the sun god in this particular chapter. So we get the first look, and we have this character design that I think looks really cool. We have the skull mask, we have the black feathered cloak, and the staff that looks like a sun. Typical One Piece fashion, the actual face of the character is covered, but it's an ominous enough look, and perspective-wise also appears to be a giant. And with everything that we know up to this point about how they were being treated sort of in an experiment-like way, really just adds to this character's introduction feeling very intense. I also find it interesting that our introduction to this character design is them walking through a hallway with multiple doors, and I am curious if there are other worlds or other sets as well. I wonder if this sun god has a Lego set with a bunch of animals and people, and then has a different set with some animals and people, and is just kind of observing a lot of different scenarios and just like playing a game. But it is so One Piece. It is so very One Piece for us to see the Straw Hats freaking out and being challenged with these giant animals. We cut away for like 2 seconds for 1 page, and then we cut back, everything's on fire, Luffy's in gear 5th and he's laughing. Apparently the lad just turns to gear 5th, not when it's needed, but whenever he feels like it. Like, it's just fun for him. Like, he just likes gear 5th. Oh, a mild opposition? Okay. I'm gear 5th now, but I can just hear the chaos leaping off of this page with the fire and people screaming and Luffy laughing. I can hear the laugh and the animals freaking out and getting punched and landing on their back, and it's just chaos. It's just absolute chaos. Now this figure enters the room and immediately starts calling things out. My Sacred Temple, calling out Muggen's name. There were a couple of other names that were called out too. I remember the snake was something, there it is. Hilmengar. Anyway, Luffy's just clocking these animals, taking them out with ease, and then they find the cat that they previously beat up. They bop him on the head, climb on his back, and charge out of there with the giant following them, and also, at some point, apparently, Nami swiped a map. So, this is the end of the chapter, and this final panel is what T-Scene drew. I love the colors that she chose for this week's art spread. I love the details in the Lego architecture as they're running away. I love the tears in the cat's eyes as it just does not want to play this role. And the towering sun god behind them, how ominous and terrifying the situation feels. And even with the sun's staff being overhead in the placement of a sun, which was something that one of my patrons pointed out. I didn't even notice it right off, but I love the placement of the sun symbol in the sky. It is notable that Chopper, as they were running away in the manga, said, "This giant seems especially huge." So we know, based off of Chopper's commentary, that this is not an issue of Oda being inconsistent with scale. This is a huge giant. This perspective that T-Scene depicted is what they're seeing. This incredible, towering figure chasing them. As they're running away, the sun god says, "You shall not escape." And that's what we leave this chapter on. T-Scene is always linked in the description. Please do go show her some love because her art, just every single week, she amazes me. But that's what we're left with. The Straw Hats running away and this figure chasing them. Now, I do think there's a lot to discuss here at the end of this chapter about what could potentially be happening here. So some of the names that are called out here, I wrote some things down here. Okay, the crow, Muggen, which I didn't recognize at first, but my patrons pointed out to me, is Odin's raven's name in Norse mythology, which I looked up, and it's actually a mashup of the 2 ravens' names, Hugin and Munin, or Hugin and Munin, I don't know, I didn't look up pronunciations. But it's a mashup of these 2 ravens' names. The snake, too, Hullengender, maybe, which is very similar to Jormungandr, which is a Norse snake that wraps around the world, or a Norse serpent that wraps around the world. Cats, too, lead the chariots of the Norse goddess Freya. I don't know anything about the rats, though, or I mean the mice. But I only took a few minutes of Googling before I sat down to do this video, so there's probably more there. But what's notable is Oda has no problem using actual names. Like, we know that the prince of Elbaf is Loki. And we've used plenty of names from literature, from myths, from all over, where Oda draws inspiration. He has no problem plucking things or placing things right in there, and then just doing his own thing with them. So the fact that he's kind of melded these names or morphed them slightly, I think we could potentially use as a clue. A couple of other things. Something that I've noticed a lot of people talking about that didn't really bother me too much is the the giant tree that is continually in focus in this chapter and in other chapters that we assume is Yggdrasil, which has actually been, people have alluded to Yggdrasil, saying like don't let the fire get to that tree, but it hasn't been confirmed that this tree is it. But I have noticed a few people saying this tree doesn't actually seem big enough. Like where we've seen it off in the distance, it seems to be so massive that this doesn't really fit. Just the same, we're in the land of the giants, supposedly. Elbaf is the land of the giants, but it's also the land of the gods. Like this is Norse mythology inspired. So assumedly, we're going to have mentions of lots of gods. So it's unsurprising that we're here and we're getting mentions of lots of gods, except that they're animals. They're not actual. It's not what I would have expected. It's a hedgehog. It's a rabbit. That's the ear god. And each of them is seemingly quite easy to defeat. Not only the ear god Luffy ate as a snack, and the hedgehog wasn't defeated, but the cat was easily defeated and then easily tamed, and they used it as a ride out of there. But also the ravens that are supposedly meant to be Odin's messenger, the snake, the serpent that wraps around the world, that's name is kind of alluded to the serpent that's wrapped around the world, was defeated with ease. Everything seems to be a little bit easy for a realm of the gods. Even though there are gods all over this place, the animals, even though that's true, the one who is actually sewing all the clothes and building all the Lego pieces, the giant that is treating this as their cage for their pets, is the actual god of the realm, right? Like the guy on the grasshopper said as much. He said, everything you're standing on here, this belongs to the sun god. So the sun god is like the one that has the ultimate authority, and then these other gods are just kind of like around, at least as far as what we've been told so far. And on top of that, the title of this chapter is RPG, which is short for role-playing game, or rocket-propelled grenade, but probably not that one. So the title itself says, or alludes to, this being a role-playing game, this being a game that someone's in control of. But then the little details don't really add up to quite what we've been led to believe, led to expect from Elbaf. So this is the impression that I'm getting. I did consider the fact that this person, the sun god, is Freya, because of the cloak that this character is wearing, the feathered cloak, and what were the other things that, oh right, her kind of like ruling over this realm, or the figure ruling over this realm, and Freya is, half of the dead are sent to Freya to rule over, and then half are sent to Odin, and the fact that the crow is named after the merging of the two names of Odin's crows, so it's possible that that's being sent back and forth between them in their two realms. But because everything seems to be alluding to things that would be related to Elbaf without actually being those things, and seemingly being a weakened version of them, my current guess, and it's nothing but a guess, is that this could potentially be a child of sorts. Now, again, Chopper did note that this is a really big giant. It's possible that Chopper just hasn't hung out with a ton of giants, and so like Chopper isn't the expert on how big giants are meant to be. But the fact that this is a Lego world, this is kind of like a play thing, and the fact that this child is dressed up in Freya's cloak, maybe. I mean, I don't know, that maybe that's a stretch. But naming all these little animals that aren't actually as strong as you would expect them to be if they actually were supposed to be, like the serpent that circles the world, or Odin's ravens, and they're not actually named those things, they're named kind of as a hearken to those things. The fact that it seems to be someone's pets that are just being given, like, you're the ear god, you're the needle god. Like, it all seems a bit childlike to me, which I'm not complaining about, because again, I'm loving this Lego world, but it all seems a little bit childlike to me, almost like a child creating a game, a simulation, a role-playing game that is reminiscent of what they've observed from the adults in the world. Now, scale-wise, I'm not sure that this theory actually works, because again, Chopper did say this is a big giant, and like what we're seeing on page, this doesn't look like a child. But it's also kind of hard to tell when almost the entire person is covered from head to toe. It's also possible that it's not a child, but rather a reject of society, someone who is not an active part of Elbaf, and so this person is just kind of creating their own little Elbaf role-playing game. And that would mean that they too are role-playing being the sun god. I think that it's very possible that the person that we've been introduced to is not the sun god. This is someone who's role-playing sun god, and this is the realm that they are role-playing being the god of, being the ruler of, but in reality, they're not. Either way, I don't think that we probably are on Elbaf right now, and I don't think that if we leave this hallway, if we leave whatever space we're occupying here, I don't think that we're actually going to end up on Elbaf, just because the Giants said when the Straw Hats first disappeared, they said that we're a couple days out from Elbaf, so I don't think that they just like spontaneously got there. I reckon we might be in a different giant realm, or we might be on an island that is only occupied by this one person who has been cast off, who's been ostracized or rejected from giant society. It should also be noted that in this hallway, it is not Lego. So again, this Lego space is an isolated space. Okay, one more thing that I think is worth mentioning. Last chapter, there were loads of inconsistencies, and a lot of people were speculating, including myself, that this is probably a hallucination or a dream, or like something is not quite right because of inconsistencies in like Luffy calling out the wrong move for what he was doing, in a sword on Nami appearing, disappearing, an axe appearing, disappearing, like things changing a bunch, her tattoo being there and then not being there. This chapter did have some inconsistencies too. Nami's sword did appear again. And there were also a couple of character things that I thought were interesting. I mean, don't get me wrong. At the very beginning of this video, I went on and on about how this felt like classic One Piece and how much I'm loving the characters interacting, how funny I've found their interactions. And I think that as a whole, these characters are very much acting like themselves, and it's a blast. But there's also a couple of things that did strike me as a little bit odd on my reread. After my first read through, when I read it again right before sitting down, there were a couple of things that I was like, you know, that is a bit strange still. Here it is. At the very beginning of the chapter, Zoro mentioned that he woke up on the other side of town by himself, and then he found Luffy on his own. He just followed the noise and found him. I don't think Zoro's ever found anything on his own. In that very same panel, when Luffy says, why couldn't you could have just beaten up the cat, Usopp, and then Usopp says, I woke up with it eating me. I was freaked out. I was freaking out. I would have expected him to just come up with a lie. Like, oh no, I was totally gonna beat him up, but like Nami got in there and she kind of messed up my grand plan. But trust me, I had the cat. I had the cat in my clutches. I also thought it was interesting when Nami came to comfort Chopper after they found him, and she was hugging him and telling him, you're safe now, don't worry, and he's crying and sobbing, and then she says, now you owe me one, which seemed odd. I don't remember Nami ever actually telling Chopper, you owe me one. I just remember her being gentle, and in my mind I'm like, Robin would never do that, but I just really I don't know that Nami would either. Oh, right. And then there was, sorry, I forgot I was still holding that. And then there was, when the grasshopper showed up, and I don't know if it's Nami or Sanji here that's freaking out. Ah, no bugs! But do they usually freak out around bugs? Because Luffy loves bugs, and I don't remember them freaking out, but maybe that's just my poor memory. That one might be on me. None of these things I really think are really, like, huge things. None of them I think matter that much, but with all the inconsistencies of last chapter, still having some in this chapter, and a couple of character beats that seem just, like, slightly odd to me, I just think it's worth mentioning that I don't necessarily think that we should just chalk it all up to, you know, Oda's just all of a sudden and abruptly making a myriad of mistakes. It's possible that, I mean, like, I still think that we can entertain that some of this is intentional and that there's something that Oda is building up to, especially with this being labeled RPG. I don't know. It's possible that the role-playing game is exclusively because they've been put in a role-playing game of this Legoland by this sun god person. But it's also possible that, I just think that we should still consider that the inconsistencies are intentional. Maybe that's just me being a fangirl, though. Anyway, that was a lot of rambling there at the end. I loved this chapter. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was so fun. Pretty much every arc in the series starts off with chaos like this. Character-focused chaos. And every time, I love it. So I love that we're doing it again. These are some of my favorite chapters, and I'm having a blast with them. What do you think is going on? What do you think is happening with this person that claims to be the sun god? What do you think is happening with this Lego world? Where do you think we are? Do you think we're on Elbaf? I'm kind of convinced we're not, but what do I know? I just think it's fun to throw things around, guess, speculate, until Oda proves us all wrong. Anyway, I would love to chat with you more in the comments, so please do chat with me more there. I will see you again soon. Bye.